What's up, guys?
Cat. That is
We
what
got
it's
cats.
We do have
It's
cats.
a brand new year.
It's a brand new dawn, a brand new day.
I was gonna come in here
Evening.
today, hyped about something, and I don't know, make a joke.
Oh, cat claws on my lap. That has been a theme over this break.
Can't remember what it was though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
But it's COVID Christmas part 2. COVID hits harder,
Yeah. Well, it's
at least for my family.
more contagious. Also a little
severe.
less crazy,
Yeah.
which is bueno. But what I will say is it does feel like it's been 12 billion years since we've done the podcast.
Oh yeah.
You're so much farther behind me, Ryan.
Am I?
Just scoot a little bit.
I don't feel
Get your
like it.
torso on level with my torso. That was a weird statement. I'm sorry. Also, if you aren't on YouTube, there are 2 cats here that are chilling.
Oh,
right
yeah.
now. But you stay in your comfortable, cozy space. But how was your little break other than all the sicky sick?
Yeah, it was good. My immediate family had a blast. We had a good fun time. We were cruising, looking at lights, having a fun time. But then my uncle came in, brought COVID to everybody. I wasn't with them for that, so we were in our own bubble, and then the rest of my family was in a different bubble. And we, crazy idea. We decided, hey, maybe we should just eat outside. We have someone that exposed all you guys to COVID. My grandmother pitched a fit, was very upset about the idea. It turned into a whole ordeal. It got to the point where she didn't want to come downstairs to open presents with us. And it was very sad.
Was it because she was for or against?
She wanted us all to come up to her apartment and eat up there in a small enclosed space when they had just... And my uncle, who brought COVID to everybody, lost his mind when someone asked him to take a test. Because he was sniffling, had the symptoms. And so my aunt was like, hey, we have the test. Just take one, just to see what it is. And he just apparently started throwing stuff, yelling. And then he ended up leaving because he found out he was positive, right? And then my cousin got positive. And we decided to just kind of separate ourselves from the other side of the family, do small interactions here and there, outside only. And it was a lot of strife. It was really sad too, because I got a gift from my grandmother.
Didn't get to give it to her?
Well, no, we did eventually, but she gave me a gift that was a book from, I'm a counseling student, a book from the guy who created my theory, I guess.
Oh, okay.
And she wrote in there that my grandfather apparently met the guy and was just a big fan, had hung out with him every so often or something. That's really cool. But she wasn't there to tell me about it. It was a really weird interaction.
We've been in this for it's not nearly 3 years, is it yet?
It's getting there, yeah.
That's kind of...
This is the 3rd year.
Once March hits, it will...
Yeah.
March 2019 was kind of when everything kicked off, when this isn't a podcast about this, but...
Yeah, I don't know. It all kind of blended together at this point, yeah.
Oddly enough, my parents had a massive gathering at their place, and... Nobody was sick. People that were sick said, I can't come because I am sick.
See, that's the craziest thing about this. See, that's the way to do it. That's how you be smart and not spread this disease everywhere. Yeah. But my uncle, so he was supposed to come in on Sunday, and he decided Saturday morning, he woke up at 4 a.m. feeling terrible, and apparently was like, this is the day I'm going to go see my family. He came a day early, snotty, coughing up a lung. I mean, even if before COVID's around, it's just not a smart idea to bring it to your 80-year-old mother's house.
Yes. Outside of that, though, Christmas was good.
Yeah.
I've had a whole week off of work. I've done literally nothing. Do
you go back tomorrow?
I go back tomorrow.
Damn. I don't go back to school until the 18th.
I don't know if I can reach this. Hold on.
He's reaching.
What's your favorite gift you got?
My favorite. Oh yeah, I see what he's doing. My favorite gift I got. I don't know.
Well, you bought yourself that.
Yeah, I did buy myself this iPad. I don't know. I made the gift of love from my family and my lovely girlfriend. Shout out.
I would say that the gift of love was also mine, but when you also are obsessed with pole arms as much as I am, and then
that was quite the gift. I got
Jamie gets you this
from the Dungeon Chronicles.
Oh, look at all that.
And Jamie.
Look if this were 3D right now, you'd be feeling this.
Yeah, audio listeners, he's holding up how big is this thing? How many feet?
How many feet? Inches? Oh, it's probably
Inches?
5.
Yeah, a big old wooden pole arm.
Yeah, now I can cosplay all my. It's apparently
I think you could probably practice.
She said it's an official you could use this to start learning. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll start exercising and actually fucking use it.
That's something you could use as a non-lethal, weapon.
Oh, you could probably kill somebody with it.
Probably, but it would be
probably kill somebody with a lot of things.
This is true.
Oh, that was a stretch, literally. But
I don't know what my favorite gift was.
I had a couple.
I got a lot of cool small things. I don't know.
Past the point in my life where we get stuff.
Exactly. Once you hit a certain age, like I could have asked for this iPad. But I was like, I want it now.
Yeah.
And so I bought it now.
That's the difference. Can I wait for this or can I not wait for this? Now, if my parents want to buy me a thing, I'll just be like, hey, vacuum, sock stuff. We've had this conversation.
Yeah, I got socks that don't have holes in it now, so that was good.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
but you know what I'll say about the past 3 years? If I could just take COVID out of it.
Yeah, change it.
It'd be pretty fucking good.
Make an errata of it.
Make an errata of it. Nice. Hello.
That's a good segue.
He's Ryan.
He's Braxton.
This is the Dungeon Crawl, and we're going to be talking about the changes, the errata that have come out over the break.
Came out
16th.
That's at least when they updated. Came out the 8th. I want to say maybe a week before.
Okay, so it's been out for it's been out for a while.
Early December. We kind of gestated on it, thought about it, and then they released an update talking about it a little bit more. But this is definitely, I would say, the biggest erratas they've done. Before, it's just been small, like word changes or clarifications, which those are still in there. There's still some rule and clarification changes. Yeah. But there's a lot more in here too.
I wasn't expecting this, to be quite frank with you. I mean, whenever I first got the link and we started reading over it and I opened...
Had you heard about the scuttlebutt before you opened the link?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you were fresh mind going into it.
Yeah, entirely. So I'm just like, okay, let's see what they do. I'm probably expecting like syntax, just a couple of other...
You're like, why are we talking about this?
Yeah, something that they did and a little bit of spoilers. They've added tends to as one of their go-to words for not upsetting people about certain things.
Yes.
And you'll see.
Yeah.
But they included like the Strahd stuff. I'm like, okay, I know what that's going to be.
Yeah. So I hadn't read the Curse of Strahd re-release. I'm curious if these are changes were already in there, or if these are more changes on top of the changes they already made.
They do have some that are like quote unquote new, but I mean, if you jump into it right away, it's the first thing it says.
Yeah. So we'll start with Curse of Strahd and make our way through it. And we're not going to cover every errata because we'd be here forever. We're going to focus on a few. I think I made some highlights and some thoughts here and there. So I definitely hear Braxton's thoughts. And I do want to say, obviously, we're two white dudes that might be talking about some racial stuff in here. So we're not entirely qualified probably to go into detail. But we were still going to talk about at least our thoughts and our takes on some of these things. And we'd love to hear yours too. Please type in the comments below. So right off the bat, dropping into the Curse of Strahd. We already know this is a charged book. Things they made a re-release. Changes have already been made. Right off the bat, the first change, happy about getting rid of some stereotypical
terms and words and
derogatory terms. Yeah, sure, sounds great. Now the next change, this one I had to look up because I didn't really understand it at first. They changed a little bit about the Visitani, right?
Yeah.
Changed the description. Sorry, you're right. Visitani. Visitani. Where am I getting that from? Anyway.
Visit you. They tell you, say, hey, you can go see Strahd.
Yeah. Maybe that's what
Stuff like that.
I think about.
Yeah.
The main change here is they changed the term about the wagon.
Oh, the wagon, right?
Yes. Yeah. So they call it now, it's just a barrel-topped wagon. In the original text, they called it called Vardos, which I had to probably not pronounce like that, pronounced Vardos. But I did look it up, and Vardos is a Romani wagon. Yeah. So again, they're trying to get rid of those derogatory connections. So that sounds great. Yeah, go. I'm all for it.
Trying to save YouTube from cat butt. I feel like day 9 right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cat butt on the channel.
It's fine.
But we're fine with it.
We're fine with it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these are in line or literally the changes that they had done before. Nothing too crazy, things that people are going to be like, well, you just changed Curse of Strahd so much that it's not the same thing and I don't want to play it anymore, Yeah,
they've just changed the Vistani a little bit, which probably needed a change. Definitely needed an update. It was not the most culturally appropriate for sure. It honestly gave me a lot of the vibes of, hey, I'm a new D&D Dungeon Master character. I'm a new DM getting into the game. And I homebrew a whole race by basing it off of another race, and it's got a lot of those weird terms in it.
Yeah. It's also in line with just something that's happened in the real world too. Like there's been a lot of cultural stuff going on with this community of people. So it's nice to reflect that. And it makes a lot of sense. There's some stuff that's going on later that are like, not too sure where that came from.
Yeah, we start off with a lot of stuff in here that I'm on board with.
Like, let's go with it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It makes me think of the stuff that we thought they were going to do whenever they mentioned they were going to start trying to be more culturally appropriate.
Yes, they said not to talk about mechanic stuff. They also made the haunted one even more good.
Yes, I always pick that one, even though that's not why I pick it.
It's the best one.
I just like the dark haunted background.
It's the best one.
So then we get into the next one I found was appropriate to talk about was chapter 5. Is Rictavio's Carnival Wagon. They've changed it from hunting evil Vistani to hunting Strahd's Vistani servants because they're, a specific sect of these Vistani are doing this stuff. And I also found it interesting that they changed the part where the tiger is recognizing them off of their scent alone, saying that they smell a certain way. So again, trying to remove those culturally inappropriate stuff so they don't smell any particular way. So that's nice. Again, we're all on board here. This one I found strange, still in chapter 5, the Vistani tint. We were talking about Luvash, that he's a drunk that has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. They took that out entirely and just said that he's the older of the two and the brother whom the other Vistani fear most. I don't entirely know.
I mean, I can see where they're coming from.
And we can connect this to stuff later. It feels like they're trying to disconnect mechanics from real world problems. Like they remove madness effects later on. So maybe that's what they're trying to say. Even if you're drunk, doesn't
necessarily mean this. They're shying away from making statements, and I can see that.
Yeah,
I can understand
I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's understandable. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I wouldn't say, hey, get this out of here right now. The other statement I'd make is I don't think they want to paint a small representation of this community that they've only put in one of these books and saying that, out of the 10 Vistani that you've met in all of D&D, 1 out of 10 of them, which is a very high percentage, is drunk and can't do shit. And, so maybe it's that as well.
Everyone hates them,
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. This one I also had to look up in the appendix. The Gothic trinkets.
I remember those.
I don't know how to pronounce these. Feral, I think was actually how when I saw it. So Feral, the first one that they took off was a ruler. A big heavy ruler that you smack people with. And then they changed it to Feral, still pronounced the same, but it's now a metal ring. It's I guess trying to get rid of the, smacking someone with a ruler like a teacher kind of thing.
I guess.
I don't know. Like I wrote on here, making it nicer. I don't know. It's an interesting, maybe it's connected culturally to Romani people. I don't think so.
The thing that's strange for me is it's a spelling adjustment as well.
Yes.
Maybe they just messed up before.
Possibly.
That was my first thought.
Very possibly. Let me see if I can, because it's the Feral, the first one says it's even in the definition, it says formerly used for punishing children.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe they did have a spelling. I don't know. It seems really weird.
I don't think there's a way to know at all. And the metal ring. So what is ferrule for?
Yeah. So let me tell you specifically what it is. It's a metal ring or cap that you put on the end of a handle to strengthen it. A stick or a tube and prevents it from splitting or wearing. So it's something you put at the end of like an axe kind of thing. You put it there. Yeah. At the end of the handle. And so it's kind of the same thing.
These trinkets typically have been for players when they're creating their characters to have in their inventory, right?
Or there's also in Strahd, there's a few roll tables to, like you're doing like a random encounters to find one of these trinkets along the route. I personally, I think both of these are poor trinkets to because a lot
one of them's usable. Well, they're both technically usable.
But some of the Gothic trinkets are super cool, and these kind of are. This is lame.
Yeah, I like the trinkets that they had in Strixhaven as well. A lot of those are really cool.
Yes.
A lot of those are very, very cool. Okay. Anything else that's like stuck out to you though? I mean, we're finished up with
the other one here would be Esmeralda's prosthetic. Before she was ashamed of the prosthetic, and now she is kind of embracing it, and so it's obviously to help out with the disability problems that D&D is also.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that sounds great. Yeah, everything else is pretty mechanic in there.
Cool. There's some mechanic stuff that I will mention at one point at the end.
You can definitely listen. I just don't want you to focus on it whenever we're looking at these because there's a lot.
I mean, I could have gone really in depth with it, but there's just some things that even just looking at them, you're like, wait a minute, what? Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
There's some abilities that have been changed and some functions that have like.
It makes me interested to think that maybe this is setting up for Monsters of the Multiverse kind of stuff. And I didn't go through. I probably should have gone to D&D Beyond and see if these changes are already reflected on those books. I assume they are.
I feel like they probably would be, and some of them do affect characters that I use.
Wow, interesting.
All the characters that I use actually.
So I wonder if it's already like.
I'll have to look. It's interesting.
So next one is the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Can I say first, the fact that I saw, and it makes sense that they did it, but Errata and having Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook, like that's a big thing.
And they've done them before, but they've never been from my understanding, as big as they like the PDF files that I own for Dungeon Master's Guide and Player's Handbook have erratas on there. As like little annotations and stuff, but they're always just like small word changes.
Yeah.
They're never as the extent as we see here.
And do they mention or state that those are unofficial now?
I think they are official.
That would make sense, because if they had said, hey, now you need to get new books, people would throw riots, reasonably so.
Well, I've never seen, when they've done the erratas, and please, in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen it on their website, like in the Sage Advice column. These were predominantly posted, tweeted about. Jimmy Crawford mentioned it. So these are pretty...
like people that are printing their books right now, they said, hey, stop, don't produce this anymore, push these out. Like it's entirely changed. And you own PDFs that you cannot change, and it's a digital
physical copies too,
And it's like, hey, WotC, do you want to email everybody that has your PDFs and say, here you go? Or do they have to purchase again? The only people that didn't get fucked over, and in a sense, they did kind of, because... what if you wanted to use the older version? You don't like some of these changes. If you primarily use D&D Beyond, you can't.
Yeah, when these changes came out, someone on our Discord said that I now own like an original copy of Volo's guide. Because honestly, that's probably the one that has the most substantial changes in it. And like, would people be selling on eBay now for a lot of cash? I don't know.
We're in a scalper's world.
I kind of want to check that out. Maybe I can get into that game.
A friend of mine did not know that they had an RTX 3090 in their computer.
How do you not know that? I mean,
not a lot of people watch Linus Tech Tips every time they eat food like I do.
Every game is just buttery smooth. Like, everyone doesn't experience this?
Well, no, it was awesome, because we were just super sidebar. I'll keep it short. But we were playing games with a bunch of our friends, and I was just really curious, like, what graphics card do you have? And they were like, I don't know. Like, look inside your computer, and they do, and they read. Is RTX 3090 what you're looking? I'm like,
excuse me?
And I literally started freaking out.
Are you making this up?
Yeah. Well, they just went to a computer shop online and said, hey, make me a computer. Hey, what's your budget?
Okay.
And they just popped it in there. So reasonable thing that happens to a lot of people. And then the next day I asked, wait a minute, what are your monitors like? When did you get them? And they go, I got them for like Christmas last year. And I go, wait a minute. Do you know their refresh rate? And they said 60. I was like, can you go in your settings real quick?
Oh, no.
One of them's 165 and one's 144 hertz. No, it's okay.
It happens. It happens a lot.
I'm just glad we found it out. I'm like, hell yeah, you just got like thousands of dollars in performance.
I've seen, like, on Twitter, being streaming community and stuff, you see people get new microphones and be like, oh my God, I've been speaking in it the wrong way this entire time.
Yeah.
Like, no one told me I was muffled.
Totally reasonable. No. I tried to be as, like, I guess supportive.
I feel like it should be on the I feel like it should be more prominent on these things.
Yeah, changing your monitor's refresh rate is not the most obvious thing whatsoever, especially if you get it gifted from somebody.
Yeah, if you're not the most computer savvy, you just get it and plug it in, you'd think, okay, it works. But then you have to go into the dark settings and find it. And even there, sometimes it won't work.
Yeah.
Like with Elgato products, I can't get it. To get my refresh rate, I have to go into multiple programs.
Crazy. Thanks for that sidebar. It was something that like blew my mind earlier this week.
Player's
Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide.
Dungeon Master's Guide. So we're kind of getting into here. They start doing more like fixes of stuff. Like, for example, they fix that shield meet takes place after midsummer, not midwinter. That's important. So this one is what we were talking about before. They kind of start getting rid of the mental illness words. So they changed mad ambition to now be called overwhelming ambition. Same effects and everything about the destined to ruling the abyss and whatnot, scary stuff. But it's no longer called mad.
That worries me.
Right.
You know, because there is madness in the world.
Yes.
And you take a look at, and it's a hot topic. Nice store, great times. I've got some good black pants in that place. They
no longer sell vinyl though, so I'm walking.
Damn. Okay. You take Lovecraft stuff, and it is laden with racism and terrible imagery.
Yes,
but it is still some of the I don't want to proclaim like best or most interesting, but it just has some good stuff on madness, and it really is a good representation.
It's definitely the best cosmic dark, like not understanding what's happening kind of literature. Yeah.
So if they release a setting that is the Far Realms, or not the Far Realms, whatever, what's the, is it Far Realms?
Far Realm,
yeah. So like if they release things that are in terrible locations and stuff is bad, what's it going to be like?
I guess I'd have to find another word for it. And okay, so as someone that has suffered with depression, anxiety, and is in the mental health field, there are very few people that I've met This is very people. I'm sure there are people out there. Obviously, it's an important topic,
Yeah.
but that have ever been offended by these words, like using the word crazy and mad and that type of stuff when referring to insanity and things. I've never met someone that's been offended or upset about that. As we do in the addiction field as well, you usually will use the terms that the person that your client is saying. So if an addict is calling themselves an addict, then
You'll say it as well.
yeah, you
meet
say
them on
it
their own
as well.
terms.
Instead of saying, well, hold on, you're not an addict, you're a person with an addiction disorder. Like, don't tell me what I am. Kind of. So it's, I don't know. It's definitely an important conversation to have. And this doesn't bother me, but we get into it with, what was the other one? I didn't open it. Tomb of Annihilation. We're not really going to cover that one, but the main thing was similar with this. They got rid of a whole madness disease and they just called it like monkey disease or something. Very, very different, similar effects, but very different. So I think it's important to not have it laced everywhere. And I agree with these changes. But I think it's also worth talking about.
Yeah, I think, like in the case that there is an otherworldly being that is truly driving somebody to a very non-studied, non-seen mental state, and it is not something that is aligned with mental illness. Like it's literally the influence of an otherworldly being. Is that then okay to be called madness, or is there too much of an analog to?
I think maybe what they could do is call it madness, or maybe completely disconnect it from any symptoms of real mental illnesses that exist.
Yeah.
Which to me can be hard to do because a lot of them people could say that's schizophrenia. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to navigate that, but good thing to bring up.
So this one in chapter 4 I found interesting. They took out the NPC mannerisms table. One of the options was originally slurs, words, lisps, or stutters, and they changed it to speaks in an unusually formal manner.
Other side of things.
Yeah, I don't understand this change.
People have stutters.
Yeah, and I don't know why would you remove that?
So read the list again.
Slurs words, lisps, or stutters. And this is just a character that you could roll on the table and say, oh, that's what my NPC does.
I think that they're saying the situation that might be bred out of it is somebody who has never slurred in their life or stuttered and has never met a person.
Sure, you could turn it into a joke.
Yeah. So I think they just wanted to remove that from happening. That is the only situation I can think of it.
Because I feel like it's good to have that representation. If someone stutters, slurs, has a lisp, it's okay for that person to exist in the Forgotten Realms.
It's hard to say that every DM is going to understand exactly what a person with a certain ailment or different state of mind is going to act and perceive. Like we're not method actors. We're not going to.
Right.
We absolutely could go out and try to bolster our games by meeting people in these communities and learning about them.
It's not feasible for everybody.
But it's not feasible for everybody. So I don't know.
These books are made for the common denominator person, just going to pick them up. And I mean this in the nicest way. The common people are usually pretty stupid. So you have to kind of have it ready for people that are going to pick it up, not be respectful or not understand it's disrespectful and turn it into a joke. And then maybe there's someone at the table that actually stutters or did stutter and be like, that's not okay.
Yeah, well, it's two sides of the same coin. This is a conversation I've had a lot of being, censorship and controlling things so that you minimize negative situations or leaving them in there and hoping that people will have the best in their nature to do the right thing. Yeah. And, one side is just nipping in the bud entirely. And the other is hoping that people are good natured and do things in a positive manner. So they took the former, which is more control, gets less stuff on them because they're doing the thing.
I think that'll be a theme for most of this errata.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of try to either go too far in one direction and not pull back in the other direction.
Great band, man. So keep going.
Yeah, the next one, they changed it, similar table, just about flaws this time. They removed what was originally specific phobia and changed it to prone to sudden suspicion. Again, kind of getting rid of that mental illness.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't have any problems. This one I found interesting was the villains method table. They changed what was originally assaults or beatings, bounty hunting or assassination, and captivity or coercion to confiscating property conspiracy and espionage or spying, and oppressive laws.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just getting out of the super dark and grimy and like grim dark kind of territory of stuff, which again, kids play this game, it's probably okay.
Yeah. And this is the players, this is the Dungeon Master's guide.
Dungeon Master's
so this is not a specific world. I'll hold my breath until they get to a world that is like grim dark, if they ever do that, and see what rules they put in there.
I don't think D&D's ever really gone that far.
Maybe this just isn't a place for you to do that.
You make a good point, and we'll talk about this at the end.
Okay.
Well, just that, what's his face? Ray Winninger, the new executive producer, whatever, the head guy of D&D, he actually talked about that a lot of these changes were to get away from putting them all into a Forgotten Realms universe or all into a Eberron universe.
We do have everything.
Like to make it a more take it and do with it as you will kind of stuff. Yeah. This one in chapter 5, they changed Slaver's Den to Hidden Thieves' Den. That seems appropriate. This was interesting as well. The tavern tables, like what type of tavern it could be, instead of the patronage of people in there being of a specific race or guild, now it's just guild. They changed brothel to music venue, so removing a brothel, I guess. They have some clarifications and stuff. The rest of the Dungeon Master's Guide is pretty relaxed until we get to a spot on page 285. And this one I found a little interesting. The cultural alterations. This section was completely removed. And this section, I don't understand. So the highlights of the cultural alterations paragraphs is 2 paragraphs. And it basically is saying that in your world, elves might be desert nomads instead of forest dwellers. They might be different, different than what we've already told you. So when you change the culture of a race, you can also make minor alterations to the race's proficiencies and traits to reflect their culture. For example, and it gives the example of a dwarf that instead of being a miner is a seafarer and invented gunpowder. So instead, if you're a dwarf, you can add the pistol and musket to the list of weapons that they are proficient with and give them proficiency with waterborne vehicles instead of artisanal tools, etc., etc. I don't understand why they removed that.
I do. It doesn't mean I agree or disagree with it, but it's exactly in line with what they've been trying to do. They don't want to have stats tied to anything.
Sure.
Culturally.
Sure. And I guess when we get to the player's handbook stuff, I guess that stuff's been taken out.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is an important place to say exactly what they're trying to say is that, well, they're not all the same. That an elf here is going to be a different elf here, then this dwarf's going to be different. They don't
want you to say that the elves here are all X. They all have a +1 to dexterity because they're seafaring, and all of them are on boats and know how to tie ropes. I don't know. It puts more into the hands of the DM to figure out and put stats to stuff and be creative, which I mean is good mental exercise. But it's also just blanketing and covering the fact that people have different skill sets. They genuinely do. And, throw in the new word that they've added that we'll be seeing again very soon, tend to. And they do have a section later on that we'll get to at the end that directly addresses this because very much like Ryan, I'm sure a lot of people are like, hey, do things just not have stats and bonuses anymore whatsoever? I don't know. I agree. I don't think that this is something that really needs to be done. I think the damage control of every single dwarf is good with a hammer and it is in the smith from the moment they're born. Like that kind of stuff, entirely understand removing it. But when you get specific to subsects of cultures, I feel like it's okay. And they kind of mention that later that, hey,
like small cultural areas.
Small cultural areas, like they tend to do this. But how tiny do we want to get? And at what point is it, okay, that's not a big enough group to where a generalization is bad. Like that's small enough. So it's finding that line and it's different for every single person. Yeah,
working with your DM to figure out how this one thing that they did in their backstory has affected. I guess that's what backgrounds are supposed to be for, but they have never really done that. And I think that's what they're trying to do now.
They
but
actually do a lot of stuff with the backgrounds.
They're pretty far into the weeds.
We're in the weeds.
Then we did the player's handbook. Most of the stuff in here. Oh, you got something?
Why the fuck are dragons less XP now? Or some of them. Some are more.
Because probably Fizzband. They got some big dragons now.
All right.
I don't know.
That's my one thing.
Maybe because they found out the players are killing them faster than they expected them to.
I guess. Well, Red Dragon got bumped up. We don't. The ones at the lower end of the list, but some of them are like.
Yeah, that is a strange change.
Actually, a lot of them have more.
And they've changed nothing else about them.
Nope. But hey, that's maybe more XP, less XP in some areas. Okay, yeah, Player's Handbook.
I would love to take a poll on see how many people use XP or milestone.
Wait, what?
How many people do you think use milestone? Or
I think
XP?
almost everybody uses milestone, but if you're like hardcore Dungeons and Dragons RPG player,
you've been playing for 40 years or something. Yeah,
it's there's a lot of fun in tracking that sort of thing. So I would not judge.
Critical Role did that for their first campaign, and I can't imagine. So Player's Handbook, there weren't too many highlights from here for me. A lot of it's mechanical stuff. You got some stuff. I want to hear it.
Not a lot.
They did change the alignment stuff. Has all been removed. That I'm happy about. The change with the drow, I really appreciate the word changes that they did for that.
Yeah.
And how they've made them more of a people.
They're not just, hey, you find the drow in here worshiping Lolth and they're bad.
Yeah, they're all Lolth worshippers, and it specifically says that the ones that follow the cult of Lolth are like this. Yeah,
they did feel like the awkward stepchild of elves. They had one purpose and they were always painted in a certain light. And this is, I guess, Ryan and I's point of that's an acceptable level of alteration here, and it 100%. Really makes sense.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, like, for example, we had a whole, like, drow kind of, like, arc in our home game, and I kind of had to jump through some hoops to find the drow that I wanted to make, which is very different than the drow that they give us.
I liked how you handle it.
And a lot of it came from older edition stuff that I really liked. So I really appreciate that change. And that's actually one they highlighted. Even if you don't open up any of the erratas, it's on, like, the main page they highlight.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a lot of really interesting word changes, kind of changing some of the mechanics of stuff.
Yes, make it more consistent.
The ones you were talking about.
So I mean, like for clerics, some of them they changed. Some of the attacks they do can launch and reflect projectiles back. They get turned into magical attacks, so that it doesn't just be entirely useless later on. Like whenever you flex stuff back, it becomes make it. It's a little bit of a buff, and I don't want to have like a massive change log here. There's some cultural things that show up with a race that you can play as, but for Tiefling, for example, hardcore zoned in onto that.
And Warlock, I would imagine.
And I literally do have to ask you about this. Hellish Rebuke now refreshes on a long rest.
Yeah,
not a day. Which does change things.
It does, yeah. It's interesting to think about how even just that one, and they did that for a lot of things, but that one word change or two word changes, I guess, really changes the dynamics of stuff.
Yeah. And they also, when I got down to, I think it's the races, I'm not sure, but skipping over one thing for the orc in particular, I can't think I find them, but that's been a point of contingency for a lot of things. Is that in this?
The orc?
Yeah.
They talk about orcs a lot in Volos. That might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah, it isn't actually in Volos. The only other thing is for Sentinel and Polearm Master. I'm not just mentioning it because I love it, but they did buff it. Or they clarified something that you and I have had questions on for ages. So they're doing a lot of in-depth analysis on these sorts of things, which makes me really appreciate it. So talking more about that than rather mechanics, but they do answer the fact that the butt end hit with Polearm Master does take the modifier.
Yeah, this makes it so Jeremy Crawford can actually point to someone when someone tweets at him and says, well,
this is in the thing.
Well, here we go.
Yeah. And Sentinel as well, it's not limited by within 5 feet. So you pull arm, they buffed it. So
again, this goes back to our talk that we've had about making like a Player's Handbook 2 kind of stuff. I guess this would probably all be written this way in Monster of the Multiverse when that comes out.
I think it will. Like everything at the second half of the Player's Handbook is not Magic the Gathering level of consistency. And some of you look at me like, Magic the Gathering consistency? Ha! But they're trying to rules lawyer a bit more consistently across all of their stuff, which is good. You won't find as many consistently conflicting things. They do add some new stuff, like spell. There's a clone spell now. There's content that has been added.
Now, obviously, D&D Beyond, these changes are probably already reflected, but I just feel bad if you go buy Player's Handbook now and you don't know about this errata, you will have...
Yeah, what do you do? It's like a vehicle recall? Say, hey, stores, get rid of all your merch.
Are they printing new books with these changes? I don't know how the errata works in the publishing field.
Yeah, I can't say whether they are or not. I haven't talked to their supply chain people,
ones
talked
are
to stores.
Out there still in publication, out there still in circulation. So
shops are going to say, well, this is like several $1,000s of product in here. We already bought it from you, so what are we going to do? This is definitely something that's affecting game stores, I would say. The D&D Beyond, again, is showing its advantages and disadvantages. You can't have these old stuff. But a lot of the alterations at the bottom, I thought you would find this very interesting. Almost all of the healing spells and of sorts have been changed from conjuration, if they were, to evocation, which makes evocation
sense.
Not just damaging spells.
Yeah, I like that change.
They did make revivify necromancy.
Again, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I always thought it was. Then we did that whole spell episode. I was like, oh.
Well, it works well in your world with the themes and what's going on. So it's very interesting. So that's really all I had to say at this point. I think it was important to mention how they are altering mechanics.
Yes. The only other thing in Player's Handbook that I appreciated was the alignment in the multiverse edition that they did. Again, I think that's the stuff that I think they should be focusing more on, making it that not everything is just because we say it's like this doesn't mean it has to be like that.
They do, and it puts a little bit of faith back in me when they get stern and mention something and say, hey, this has to be like this. Mm-hmm. It's the second paragraph of that new alignment thing, and it's saying that alignment is an essential part for celestials and fiends.
Yes.
They might not be this way or show this personality trait or even tend that way, but inextricably bound into the essence of their being. They're tied to the outer planes.
Yeah.
And if they were not lawful evil like devils are of that plane, then they would go through a transformation or be an entirely different being.
Yes.
Because that is what, as we are made up of cells and different sorts of building blocks, this is what gives these things shape and form. They're just, I mean, it's directly fronting that thing of these group of beings are this way. It is literally that.
And I think this is a great segue into the Volo's conversation because I think they get away with it here and I talked about this with my girlfriend, like I was trying to figure out why do you think they're making all these changes in Volos? And she was saying that maybe because those are more humanoid-esque races, that people can play them now and people can get into them.
That's exactly what it is.
That they have to make them more accessible and less, controversial and whatnot. While this, devils and demons, those are everyone. That's just ingrained in our society that those are bad individuals. You don't want to mess with the devil. So that leads us to the Volos conversation.
I know exactly what you're getting to. So everything between this has been a similar to Strahd kind of adjustments and phrasing of words, or similar to Player's Hand Guide, mechanic changes that are making it more consistent.
I've been happy with most of them.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that jumped out and I was like, what the hell? There's nothing that changes your class entirely, except for the things that literally affected my characters in a very significant way, or clarifying something. Just me. I'm a very odd case. If you're Tiefling Warlock, you got some good buffs going on.
But I mean, when Tasha's came out, it kind of did that. It added stuff. It was almost like an errata for the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, now when you make characters, it says, do you want optional features? And almost all of them are from Tasha's.
And if you're making a character, always say yes.
Always say yes. And it's kind of hidden because you have to add the class and then it's a tab above what you're looking at. And you press that again and then you can see the options. It's not built in. I guess in
theory, ask your DM, but I feel like if a DM says no to these optional features, they're living 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They're great features to have.
Player's Handbook pre-errata purist.
Yeah.
There might be some of you out there.
It shouldn't be. So Volos, starting off though, I was on board. I like the addition, the third paragraph replacement for the monster lore stuff, saying that this stuff in here, this made me think this was going to go in a different direction, because the very first stuff says that lore in this chapter represents the perspective of Volo only. This is how Volo views these creatures.
So you read that in a positive way, huh?
Yeah, because to me that's Volo, or whoever's editing Volo's work, saying that he's kind of got a flawed perspective.
Okay. So see, I read it as that way, in a negative manner, of them trying to say what Volo views as, and not even because it's negative.
Backpedal a little
but
bit.
this is not dictating what everything is.
Like
this is
words.
I mean, this is an extreme example, but this is like saying, hey, this H.P. Lovecraft dude is very racist. This is not the representation of how everything is. So it's viewed in that kind of manner. Cat's going crazy.
Cat's getting this stuff.
Hopefully it's not the trash can. I'll check in a moment. But to me, this read, geez, is she in the trash?
I can't tell.
Let me go check. And for Volo in particular, I mean, there's a lot of people in the world now that have opinions and that state things. People are like, well, holy hell. So I don't know if they're going to have
people just
books.
went to Christmas. They probably heard a lot of those things from their family members. Yeah.
I won't be surprised if they said, hey, this is Tasha's view on the world. Like what do we put this sort of thing in every single book?
I mean, especially because that's how they frame their books, is that this is written by Tasha, written by Volos. So these are all people writing, and we're reading their material.
Yeah. So I felt this like saying, "Hey, this is our crazy grandpa." You know, he's from a different generation. Okay, so he says, "Don't pay too much mind to it. You can take what you want and go elsewhere." So that's what I felt it at. Maybe it's just looking at things kind of too negatively, but they remove things that state things about races and characters.
Yeah.
So they don't want
segues into the first change that was.
I mean, you probably were immediately like, oh.
Yeah.
Pretty much immediately.
Well, to be fair, when I first heard about the errata, why I wanted to do it in the first place was I saw people posting about it on Twitter about how this changed a lot of stuff. And I didn't read it, but I saw a big Reddit post that said all the lore taken out of Volos. And I was like, what?
I mean, it got a little bit.
Yeah. So going into the next change is role-playing a beholder. The 3 paragraphs for the tables are replaced with the following. And I'm going to read this because they've taken this exact wording and put it in front of a lot of things. Yeah. And by putting it in front of, I mean removed everything else and put this there.
Yeah.
When you're role-playing a beholder, the following tables contain possible inspiration. They suggest characteristics that a beholder might possess. And then it has multiple tables, personality traits, flaws, etc., ideals, bonds. And it has this for every monster in Volos. They removed lots of what I would consider cool and interesting information for beholders. And to be fair, removing this information doesn't change much about the beholder because they've already mentioned it in paragraphs leading up to it, how the beholders act. But it mentions how they respond to things. For example, a beholder constantly fears for its safety, is aggressive when dealing with perceived threats. I feel like these are all important things because I mean, a beholder is very different than a human. I'm a human, and if I'm a DM playing a beholder, to get into this beholder's head, this information is useful for me.
Yeah. So the thing I've experienced with Pathfinder as well is while they do give descriptors, and quite often they do a pretty great job of it, you don't really see them all the time because the mechanics take the forefront in Pathfinder. Right. So it's weird in 5th edition where they're kind of going towards that and saying, well, maybe they don't need that flavoring to be able to run this monster. Let's let them run it the way they do. But it ends up being, D&D, the one where it has more RP. You don't have the content that you need, which is exactly what you've been saying. And for a beholder in particular, Volo, not himself, but Xanathar's a beholder. He's not bad.
He's conflicted. Yeah, he's conflicted. He's got weird things going on with him.
So that's a good example. What's to say that this book shows up and you see, well, Volo told me that every beholder I have is absolutely crazy. For example, Jamie from the Dungeon Chronicles loves making friends with monsters. Yes, comes with a lot of fun things. Would a basilisk typically befriend a group of people and hang out with them? A book might say no. The previous D&D content might say no. Stare at you, turn you into stone. Beholder, in this case, what's to say your group now gets a new opinion and says, well, you want to try to befriend them, but no, I won't let you do that at all. Like, is that a bad situation? So I think they're trying to put room for beholder NPCs and, beholder players. I don't know.
That would be scary.
From our point of view, that can't happen. But there's a group that wants to play an all beholder campaign.
Well, let me ask you this, because I don't disagree with what you're saying. Let me ask you this. Do you think instead of removing that stuff, because I had this thought after I read that they did this for like every single monster in here, instead of removing that content and adding that paragraph in, those couple sentences, they could just put that in front of it. And instead of saying that the following tables, say the following words. To give you examples on how a beholder could act.
Yes. So I come from a theater background, and any piece of information I get is literally just juice for figuring out how to be something. So I also put a lot of faith in the masses, to contrast what you said in the beginning. I should not. I really should not. But I want to believe that somebody could open up this guide and read the page 5 new Monster Lord paragraph and understand that everything that is said within this does not go for everything in 5th edition. And that's all we should need. You should be able to keep just role-playing a beholder and have all of the fancy information about them going, there's that word again, mad, representation of that. So I would hope that somebody reads that and says, okay, well, I don't want my beholder to be like that. They are in a position of power, right? WotC. They are writing the content. They are dictating the game. People see that and they say, no, this is how it has to be. I feel like that's a very loud vocal majority, or minority.
Rules as what written.
Rules is written.
Yeah.
Like, this is how it is. Beholders have to be this way. And then that breeds an argument and that comes around the table. Like, no, you cannot play a beholder in this way that you did, DM. I don't like, what are you doing? No, well, WotC told me, take it up with them.
Yeah, player getting upset that they acted a certain way towards a beholder, and the beholder acted different. Like, well, if I act this way, the beholder should be upset with me. So I was going to get in a fight with it, and now it's friends with me.
That's a very like reasonable statement to have. I mean, metagaming aside,
maybe they're a beholder expert.
Maybe they're a beholder expert. So
but then if they're a beholder expert, they should know they're not a beholder.
They do this. Why do they have to do both of the monsters that we?
Well, I read this later too. That what they could do, put instead of maybe that exact wording, say the following are suggestions, or these are examples within the Forgotten Realms. I don't know.
Did they have much for gnolls and cultists? Because for gnolls, they are a playable race, and especially in Pathfinder, they're very different than they are in D&D. So I feel like that's a spot that they would really, really change things. And cultists, they're cultists. This is a generalization of a group, so I can see why they're adjusting. I'm very interested because I didn't get to that portion of this because I was mostly looking over the Mind Flayer and Beholder stuff.
Well, I do want to say before you jump to the gnolls, because I do like that. Well, I don't like that. Well, I want to get into that.
Yeah.
Before we get the only change to giants that they made was removing a section talking about fire giants selling people as slaves. And I like to think that's the reason they removed it, because they even used the word slave in here. But I think again, this taking out this idea of what fire giants do, I don't know. I understand what they're going for though.
The noble pursuit there is, if we remove new slavery from imagery and content all across the world, will people forget what it? Now, that's a massive statement. I'm not trying to say that the history should be forgotten. I very much disagree. We should learn from it. But in the case of this, if we never show negative things in media, people won't learn about them. So maybe they won't do them. Maybe. Like, what other reason is there to remove it other than content warning or shock in terms of like PTSD?
And I think a lot of these problems could A, be solved with the Session Zero.
Yes.
And B, I don't know B. But Session Zero, and I guess it is tough because WotC is a big company that has shareholders and all this jazz. That might see stuff like this. You're like, oh, this was in your book. Oh, you got to change it, or I'm gonna, no longer be one of your shareholders.
It's similar to the mess that the rating system for movies and video games is, particularly movies. Like, people that review those are absolutely crazy. But I don't know. I think there's good intent, but ultimately it seems to be controlling of their biggest billboard, which is the loud group on social media that complains about certain sorts of things or makes justified statements on certain sorts of things. Whether they're the minority or not, the majority does get on social media and reads that, even though they're not the type of person to speak. It's still a really effective group at changing things, and social media is a billboard. So if they're saying that WotC is, portraying X, Y, and Z,
sure, bad publicity. I thought this the other day after our last D&D session about how, to me, it almost feels like they heard the complaints from people and they're like, okay, let's go in and try to figure out what the problem is. And then missed the mark entirely, thinking they're putting Band-Aids over everything and then healing the problem. Just like when Black Lives Matter and stuff was happening, they were just putting black pictures everywhere, not doing anything about it. It's like, you're just doing what everyone else is doing. It's just a publicity statement at this point. This could very well be, hey, we've made a lot of important cultural changes. Come back to our game, please. I don't know.
Insert important cultural changes. Orc traits. Menacing is now primal intuition. And I feel like they jumped out of one pit into another. Is primal a positively connotated word in these books? It could definitely be misconstrued as primitive, which is literally is based out of. You read it and it's like, okay, well, it's a bonus to animal handling, insight, intimidation, medicine, nature, like it's a positive thing. But they got rid of orcs and menacing, which good thing if they're going for, we don't want all orcs to be perceived this way, to they are primally intuitive people. So I just feel like somebody else could misconstrue that into a negative way as well. So they're doing things, but not executing it well. Could I do better? Probably not.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think the kobold change is absolutely criminal from to get rid of that stuff. Because just like I'm gonna talk about here with the orc stuff, I highlight a couple things on the orcs that I don't know what they're thinking. Because the kobold stuff, the things they removed are actually pretty positive stuff about kobold culture, about how they know that people are gonna try to take advantage of them, so they use that to their advantage. They're pretty crafty sons of bitches. And then we get into the orcs one here. They removed obviously the same role playing section as well, but some of the stuff in here I found important to change. Like the role playing orc here, it says it's possible that an orc, if raised outside its culture, could develop a limited capacity for empathy, love, and compassion. And then if you take that a step farther and go, a lot of the times orcs have been used as an allegory for African American people, Black people. But yeah, that's not a great statement to use.
Yeah.
And then even it goes on to say, no matter how domesticated an orc might seem, its blood just flows beneath the surface. That's it. Yeah, that's probably a good change.
Yeah.
So that I have no problems with. And then they go on to remove the half orc section, which, yeah. And where's the part here? The orc as underlings. Yeah, they remove that too, and that's not great either. But the half orcs is particularly, I think, what they could have done to make this better. And I'm gonna read it out to you and tell me if you think you agree. Okay. The lore of humans depicts orcs as sexual fiends, is what I'm gonna say. So they probably already made a boo-boo by writing that down in the first place. They did not say sexual. Intent on coupling with other humanoids to spread their seed far and wide. In truth, orcs mate with non-orcs only when they think such a match will strengthen the tribe. I think how they could have fixed this, obviously, maybe change the words a little bit. But they're already saying that humans view these people as bad people, but they're really not. They could say, in truth, orcs are not this way. They're usually pretty, reserved humans or humanoids. And if they want to mate with a non-orc, usually love is involved, or they just, met the right match.
Yeah, the right match, yeah. I think this is a core of, all of it, specifically the orc thing as well. Because, do you want to not live in a world, is media that portrays brash and negative things, not tying it to a culture aside. Sure. Is that content, does that have a place in media and literature?
Mm-hmm. Well, even tying it to, even knowing that's what sci-fi is all about, is taking the problems we have on our small little planet, our small insignificant planet here, and taking it to a grander scale. And District 9 is about,
oh my gosh, yeah,
it's about racism and apartheid and all that stuff, but it's using aliens. Mm-hmm. And so it makes people that maybe not have been receptive to that, to a movie about that theme, able to go, oh, I understand, or maybe not even understand, but then you could have that dialogue and be like, oh, do you understand what this is about? And be like, oh, no, I don't. And you can talk to them about it. So I think that's the beauty of fantasy and sci-fi, is that we can have those conversations. That's what I love with our home game. We have some tough conversations sometimes. And I think it's very important. And I don't think this necessarily, that I'm not specifically talking about the half orc and orc changes, but I think having these changes sometimes goes a step too far by making it more of a blanket kind of field, and makes it harder to have those conversations.
A good and very silly example is the United States sex education system.
Okay, tell me more.
I won't go too far into it, which is also the issue, but they avoid talking about it, and also just money and how to handle the
video we watch is from the 80s.
Yeah, there's a lot of perceived negativity about teaching kids these things, and they grow up ignorant about a lot of it and don't have to navigate these things.
Well, it's the same misconception on if you talk about suicide, you'll just lead more people to experiencing suicidal thoughts, which is, according to all the research is out there, is actually the exact opposite. Where these misconceptions happen, they just get stuck in our society. Then we have people out there that are struggling because we're not talking about these things, and we have people that are having kids when they're not ready for them because no one told them that's what happens when these things occur.
Now, Ryan Braxton, that is very different from slavery and really dark topics. Very, very different. But I think learning from mistakes is important. And for me, I feel the negativity of those aspects is portrayed objectively.
Yeah.
But also not everybody thinks the same way that I do. So
we're thinking from our perspective when, again, WotC's a big company. Lots of people play their stuff. And as we have talked about, even in past episodes, people will play D&D and DM for somebody and not treat this stuff with the respect it deserves. And oftentimes we'll do it live in front of an audience, and it goes, as you would imagine, probably pretty poorly.
Very poorly.
And I think that's what a lot of these change. I would imagine when stuff like that happens on a grand scale like that and on a stage for people to see, it probably comes back to WotC. And even though WotC's like, we never explicitly said these things, that people are like, wait, never explicitly said. Nah. And then they go through and find, oh, you said this about orcs, and people portray orcs like this.
I think they're predisposed
to
to act this way.
Yeah.
I think their hands are tied and they have to do this whether they believe it or not. They may, and I think there are creators and people on these teams that do believe in improvement for cultural health and knowledge.
And we saw that with Candlekeep. They brought in a lot of people from a lot of different cultures. They told a lot of really cool cultural type stories, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But I will go back and say, I think what they should do instead of removing things is adding stuff. I think adding words to say that this is not how all, this is not just because this says this, it doesn't mean a kobold. Because they've added that in other books where they say that just because we've said this doesn't mean you can take it in a different direction.
So I think kind of tying that up for
the Mind Flayer one, but my God, I don't know what they're doing there.
Yeah. So do they clarify this in the second portion, in the clarifying the errata, or is it within?
Yeah, we should probably talk about that.
Honestly, I feel if they print any of these books with these changes, clarifying the recent errata needs to be like a leaflet.
Yeah, let's go there.
The thing.
Because we could talk about the WotC, but I'll say the same stuff again.
Yeah.
So I do just want to say the Mind Flayer one makes zero sense to me because it literally says that Mind Flayers have a brilliant mind, but whatever.
Yeah.
I will end there.
This is what specifically the Mind Flayer thing is what I was thinking that you were going to get hot and bothered about.
Getting charged up.
Yeah, I totally feel it.
Okay, so clarifying a recent errata came out, I want to say 5 days to a week
On
later.
the 16th.
Yeah, by Ray Winiger, who is since 2020 the executive head of D&D for WotC. So I'm not gonna read the whole thing. It's a pretty lengthy document. You can find it in their Sage Advice.
Yes, if you go just to the Sage Advice book updates,
I'll try to link it down in the description.
It has all these PDFs, what we've been reading off of, and just scrolling down gets to this.
But the highlights that I want to say, you might have different highlights as well, but the highlights that I want to point out is they do say, he kind of acknowledges the response that this thing had. And they say, for example, we haven't decided that beholders and mind flayers are no longer evil. And so maybe people were taking it a step farther, saying, hey, you said mind flayers aren't evil anymore, but they do terrible stuff. They're not saying that, which we just covered. They're not saying that. So I appreciate him saying that. Then he goes on top of the multiverse, which is what I said earlier, about how they're trying to make it less about the Forgotten Realms and make it more, you can do whatever you want with these creatures. They exist. They can be in your world. They don't have to be in your world, whatever. He says, since the nature of creatures and cultures vary from world to world, we're being extra careful making authoritative statements about such things without providing appropriate context.
That is exactly like the thesis of all this.
And he says, if we're discussing orcs, it's important to know which orcs we're talking about, which I would agree.
Which I like. This is my favorite language that they've had about all of this. It states we have an authority and we don't want to use it without giving clarification. But also some things for writing in circumstances are certain ways. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah, this is saying that they can be different in your world, and that's okay because it's your world. You can deal with it as you will. And then we have in the alignment section where he says, whether or not most halflings are lawful good has no bearing on your halfling and who you want to be. So talking about how not all creatures, not all halflings, not all orcs respond the same way to stuff, which again, I think is a very good response to say.
There's another statement in that in particular that I think really drives it home. I think it might be right above that. It's about it being impossible, and it's restating for blanket statements. Like blanket statements are impossible without clarification, essentially. I honestly, out of everything that WotC has put out, books and content included, this is one of my favorite things. Yeah. It's worded poignantly, and it doesn't sound like a company hiding within their little huddle trying to not harm people. They say we don't want to, and we have the authority. We want to use it responsibly, but here's where we stand, and we want to make content for you, not not content. I don't know how to word that. I mean,
Not
we don't want to just remove things for removing things.
Yes.
And then creature personality, I think alignment was a big section of it. We don't use alignment all that much.
No,
So
I don't
use
use alignment for my stuff. But I do find it interesting that he says here, we also removed things that say that all mind flayers or all beholders share a single stock personality. When I do want to clarify, that's not what they took out.
Yeah.
Again, the stuff they took out for mind flayers say, I guess they do say, typically exists as part of a collective colony mind, okay? The next sentence says, yet illithids aren't drones to an elder brain. Each has a brilliant mind, personality, and motivations of its own. That's contradicting what he's saying.
Massive change.
Yeah, I don't.
Because traditionally, illithids are connected to a single brain, and they are just a hive.
But sometimes, and I like that because just because they're controlled by the elder brain doesn't mean they don't have their own desires and thoughts that are kind of like Stockholm syndrome, like trapped inside their brain. So if you destroy the elder brain, maybe there'll be a different kind of individual, which we've seen. There are illithids that break out and are very different.
You've got Baldur's Gate. It would be interesting to see how they handle that.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah. They even have the renegade illithid.
So the final thing to touch on, and this is another rules thing, because I feel like we kind of made our theses as well, kind of rounding that out. Some big stuff that came about from Silvery Barbs, as well as how that works, and spells.
Oh, yes.
And spell attacks. That's, I think, another really, really important thing.
Yes, the spell attacks is important.
So is a spell attack a spell? The answer, flat out, they have said, is no. What I will complain about first is, can we give it a different name? Can it be magic attack? Why does it have to have spell in the name? And then Kenneth said, when I was talking to him about it, just, it's simplicity's sake that I want to change all of the word spell attack in every single D&D. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Sure.
Makes sense. But this also means that, it is nerfing counterspell, which I don't necessarily feel too bad about, but it nerfs the player's counterspell, particularly, not enemies' counterspells. So when a monster casts a spell without using spell slots, how do you know the spell level? They talk about that. It's not super important. Silvery Barbs does not affect legendary resistance, big old statements here. It's cool.
Yeah, the spell attack thing is
I don't like it.
I don't like, and we talked about this when they mentioned they were going to change these stat blocks, and I didn't like it then either because I like it for simplicity's sake. As a DM running a creature, you see their ability. Cool, let's use it. Instead of having to see they have Fireball, I have to go look up what Fireball does. But I think it should still be a spell in its entirety. To make it easier for players to interact with the stack, as we call it. That doesn't mean I don't think dragons should have particular like breath weapons. That's obviously not a fireball. I mean, there are abilities that creatures have that can be magic related, but not be spells. But if you're just literally taking a spell, copying, pasting it, and making an ability, that should be a counterspellable thing. Yeah.
The question is raised, then why not just make this an attack? And I think they just wanted to have the magic-y, non-physical stuff categorized in a specific portion.
And maybe they'll come into play at another later date.
I think so. It also made me feel a little bit bitter about player classes and features, because spell attacks are essentially similar to what features people get as a part of their subclasses. There are certain attacks that certain player options get. And it's really similar to this. But I'm always going to complain about how homogenous a spell book and a spell list makes things in D&D. How when you're playing a spellcaster, you're essentially the same thing. The only restriction is which spells you can use. And I think giving classes spell attacks as well would be really cool. We already effectively do, but my dumb brain is like, I want syntax. Show me. Make creatures and monsters functionally similar. I've always wanted that, because in Pathfinder, it is very much
all the words are the same.
Everything is the same. Whether you're looking at a player's character sheet, sure, there's more information, but functionally they run the same.
And I think a lot of that comes from the designers of Pathfinder going in, knowing exactly what they want to make and sticking with it.
Yep.
While WotC have kind of pivoted a few times.
They got a lot of eyes on them.
And maybe 5.5e when it comes out. 5.5e will maybe solidify what they want D&D for the future to be.
Well, the dangerous thing, and this is kind of my ending statement, is with all these erratas and changing waters, the content they're doing now, the new edition is in development. Yes. There's a limit to how flexible they can be to reflect changes in response to people giving them new feedback about 5th edition right now. They're at a certain point, there's like a lag time in where they can affect and adjust things. And I'm worried that when this comes out, it's going to feel like, well, we kind of hope they do another errata on it when it comes out because they made these changes. So with the state that they're in, I imagine that in theory, it never would come out. but because they need to make money, it's going to get pushed at some point when they would have wanted to make a change at another point before it came out and say, hey, let's just delay it a little bit. We need to make an adjustment based off feedback we learned from 5th edition. Nope, sorry, man. The cutoff's here. We need you to release this product now. Money's at the center of a lot of issues.
Yeah, and we got Monster the Multiverse coming out in
when is that?
A couple weeks. I think it's end of January.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting for us to go over.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big book.
It'll be a very big book. There's going to be a lot of mechanic stuff. I try not to get in the weeds about it. But
still, I don't believe you can pre-order it anywhere except for that bundle.
Nope.
So if you're wanting to pre-order, hold off.
Just
I'm sure it'll be released somewhere.
I very much hope so.
At least on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Makes more sense now. I wonder if the books that were bundled with Monster the Multiverse are errata.
Yeah. There's no Dungeon Master's Guide in there, but it's Player's Handbook, Tasha's, and Monster.
It's Tasha's and something else.
I feel like Xanathar should be in there too, but I don't think it is.
It might be.
I gotta check.
It might not be. I don't know. So the interesting thing with that is they can technically say, unless you're on D&D Beyond, you technically don't own these versions of these books. So we feel justified in selling it because it will be a new product for you.
Yeah.
So a little scary.
So it's no Player's Handbook. Tasha's, Xanathar's, and Monster the Multiverse. So it's kind of like an expansion set.
Yeah.
For $150.
Ryan owns all those books already. Well, no, you don't. You don't have the eroded versions. So you might as well just buy it.
Well, I will say the eroded versions of the ones that are in there, there's a reason we didn't cover them because they're not in here. There's no eroded versions of those.
Tasha's Cauldron, yeah.
Tasha's in there, but Xanathar's no.
Xanathar's, which is pretty surprising.
There's also a reason we didn't cover any of those because they're cool changes, but it's not worth covering.
Further cementing the Xanathar's is a really damn good book. Okay, yeah, I think, I'm not looking at the time that we recorded, but I feel like it might be one of the longest episodes.
For a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of the longer episodes that we've done.
I hope you enjoyed it. This was less of a fun episode, more of us chatting about.
Just chatting, figuring out what the hell is going on. Yeah. So, again, as we said at the beginning, we are a very small section of the world and we experience our own certain things and are not well equipped to discuss the cultures and opinions of others. So if there's a time that you want to chat with us and let us know more context about these changes, and if they do feel positive to you and you did appreciate them, or if you have a different opinion, talk to us on social media at Dungeon Crawl Pod for Twitter and Instagram. If you want to send us an email, a little bit longer bit of information on something we talked about or an opinion you have, just because you roll that way, thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com. We do also have a Discord that we have paused a lot of our games. We do typically have a few running in all sorts of different systems. If you ever feel like joining, get to know us a bit, and then maybe we can have you jump into a game after you've hung out for a while.
We'd be honored to have you.
We'd be honored. That is in the link tree that is in the description, which also has our Patreon. If you ever feel like supporting us, that's a great way to do so. We've had it created for a little bit of time now, and some people have come in and come out and have been supporting us for a little bit. So have those roll across the screen. Thank you very much for doing so and helping us kind of keep this thing going. It's been a lot of fun. But that's kind of
2022 is the year of the dungeon.
Was the crawl this year?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. The entire year of 2021, we said it was the year of, I think it was the dungeon. Year of the crawl? Year of the dungeon, because we had 2 podcasts.
And we're about to have, we still have 2, but it's coming back, baby. Dungeon Chronicles will be returning to you on a screen near you.
And earphones or
and
speaker
your
or whatever you do.
Just type in the Dungeon Chronicles. If you're on YouTube already, just hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, and you'll get it in your inbox. But if you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else listening to us, then type in the Dungeon Chronicles. It should come up. Hey, before the next season comes out, listen to the old episodes. They're pretty good.
Just follow it, get notified, content. So when it does come out, you'll know.
Yeah, and it should be in the next, either this month or next month for sure. We'll get things moving.
Right in this
room.
It'll be a different setup. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll be in person again. So if you liked to be fair, the first 4 episodes were in person, but a little scuffed audio.
Yeah.
If you liked that vibe, we'll be back in person. So that'd be nice.
Yeah. All right.
I feel like D&D's always more fun in person.
Yeah, well, he's got like 6-something years of DM experience. So Ethos?
You're almost there.
I said all of them.
Yeah, well, you were narrowing it down.
Yeah.
You said the 2 that it definitely wasn't, so you're trying to figure out. There you go.
There we go.
And we'll see you next time. And honestly, maybe next time we'll take it, because this was kind of a chunky, not so fun, sad episode. Maybe next episode we'll talk about the best of 2021.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
Because that was a sad year.
Oh yeah, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy Boobier. Sorry.
So then we'll talk about what we enjoyed about 2021. Instead of focusing on the bad, sad stuff, we'll talk about
some good
enjoyable
in
stuff.
there.
There was some good in there.
There's some good in there. All right.
We'll see you then.
Well, hold on.
What?
5 stars on iTunes. What the fuck? Or
You
Apple
rate us 5
Podcast.
stars, guys, on Apple Podcasts.
There you go.
We appreciate you.
He's Ryan.
He's Braxton. Thanks for calling with us.
There you go.
We'll see you real soon.
Take care.